Your water heater is one of the most expensive appliances in your home. It runs every single day, every single hour, whether you are using it or not. And every month it adds $40 to $80 to your electricity or gas bill without you even thinking about it. Over 10 years, that is between $4,800 and $9,600 for hot water. Something the sun produces for free every single day. There is a system that figured this out decades ago. It costs around $300 to build. It costs exactly $0 to run. It has been heating water for hundreds of millions of people across China for over 30 years. And in most Western countries, you have probably never heard of it. That is not an accident. Here is everything they never told you. The system is called an evacuated tube solar water heater. It was developed and mass-produced in China starting in the 1970s and 1980s, driven by necessity. China had a massive population, rising energy demands, and a government that understood one thing clearly: the sun is free and glass is cheap. So they built a system around those two facts and scaled it across the entire country. Today, over 400 million Chinese households use this technology. That is more than the entire population of the United States. It is the most widely used solar thermal technology on the planet, and the average American homeowner has never seen one in person. Here is how it works and why it is so effective. The system consists of a series of glass tubes, typically between 15 and 30 tubes depending on the size of the installation. Each tube is made of 2 layers of borosilicate glass with a vacuum sealed between them. That vacuum is the key. It works exactly like a thermos flask. Heat cannot escape through a vacuum because there is no medium to carry it. So once the sun heats the inner tube, the energy is trapped. It cannot go anywhere except into your water. The inner surface of each tube is coated with a selective absorber material, a dark coating that absorbs solar radiation across a wide spectrum and converts it into heat with an efficiency of over 90%. Inside each tube sits a copper heat pipe. The bottom of the pipe sits inside the evacuated tube and gets extremely hot. The top of the pipe connects to a manifold, a sealed header running across the top of the system, filled with water or a heat transfer fluid. The heat from each tube transfers directly into that fluid, and the fluid circulates into your storage tank. By midday, in average conditions, the water in the tank reaches between 140 and 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough for showers, laundry, dishwashing, everything a standard water heater does, using nothing but sunlight. The reason this system is so much more effective than flat-plate solar collectors, the kind you may have seen on rooftops in the 1970s and 1980s, comes down entirely to the vacuum. A flat-plate collector loses enormous amounts of heat to the surrounding air, especially on cold or windy days. The evacuated tube loses almost none. The vacuum insulates it completely. This means the system works even on overcast days, even in winter, even in climates that are not particularly sunny. Tests conducted in northern European countries with relatively low solar irradiance showed these systems still covering 50 to 70% of annual hot water demand. In sunnier climates like the American South or Southwest, the coverage is between 80 and 100% year-round. The backup from your existing water heater fills the gap on the worst days. But for most of the year, your existing water heater simply does not turn on. Now, here is the part that nobody in the Western energy market wants to talk about. This technology is not new. It is not experimental. It is not unproven. It has been running reliably on hundreds of millions of rooftops for decades. The manufacturing process in China is highly refined, and the cost per unit has dropped dramatically as production scaled. A complete evacuated tube system, tubes, manifold, storage tank, frame, and all fittings, can be sourced directly from Chinese manufacturers for between $200 and $400, depending on size. Shipping to the United States or Europe adds $100 to $200. A competent DIY installer can have the system running in a single weekend. Professional installation adds $500 to $1,500 depending on your location. Total investment between $300 and $600 for a basic self-installed system. Payback period at average U.S. electricity rates, 12 to 18 months. After that, every single drop of hot water your system produces costs you nothing. For the next 20 to 25 years, which is the average system lifespan, you are producing hot water for free. So why is this not standard on every new home built in America? The answer is not technical. The systems work. The answer is not financial. They pay for themselves faster than almost any other home improvement. The answer is structural. The American residential energy market is built on consumption. Natural gas companies, electric utilities, water heater manufacturers, their revenue depends on you using their product every single day for the rest of your life. A system that eliminates that consumption for 20 years is not a product they will ever recommend to you. Building codes in many U.S. states create friction for solar thermal installations through permit requirements, inspection fees, and contractor licensing rules that do not exist for replacing a standard water heater. In some HOA-governed communities, solar installations of any kind are explicitly prohibited. The technology is not banned outright. It is just made inconvenient enough that most people never pursue it. The information gap is maintained, and the bills keep coming. There is something else worth understanding about why China adopted this technology at scale, while the West largely did not. In China, the government actively subsidized solar thermal adoption as a national energy strategy. Local manufacturers were supported, standards were set, and the technology became normalized as a basic household system rather than an exotic green technology for wealthy homeowners. In Germany, Austria, and Denmark, the Western countries with the highest solar thermal adoption rates, similar government subsidy programs drove installation rates that are 10 to 20 times higher than in the United States. The technology is identical. What differs is whether the political and economic system creates conditions for adoption or conditions for resistance. In the US, the resistance won, not because the technology failed, because the technology worked too well. Let me give you the practical breakdown of what a basic system looks like for a typical household. A family of 4 needs approximately 80 to 100 gallons of hot water per day. A 20-tube evacuated tube system with a 100-gallon storage tank covers this demand under average solar conditions. The tubes themselves measure approximately 6 feet long and 2 inches in diameter. The entire rooftop footprint is roughly 4 feet by 8 feet, smaller than a standard solar panel array. The system is entirely passive. No pump is required in a thermosiphon configuration because hot water rises naturally from the manifold into the tank while cooler water descends back into the system. No electricity, no moving parts, nothing to break, nothing to maintain beyond an annual visual inspection and occasional cleaning of the tube surfaces. For those in climates with hard freezes, the system uses a closed-loop antifreeze configuration rather than direct water circulation. The evacuated tubes heat a propylene glycol solution, which transfers heat through a heat exchanger into your water tank. This adds some complexity and modest cost, but operates reliably in temperatures well below 0 Fahrenheit. Systems installed in Minnesota, Canada, and Scandinavia have been operating for decades without cold weather failures when properly configured. The tubes themselves are remarkably durable. Borosilicate glass, the same material used in laboratory equipment and high-quality cookware, withstands thermal shock, hail impact, and UV degradation for decades without degradation. If a single tube breaks, which happens occasionally from severe hail or physical impact, it simply stops contributing to the system while the remaining tubes continue operating. Replacement tubes cost $8 to $15 each and install in under 2 minutes without any tools or draining of the system. No plumber required, no service call. Here is what the real numbers look like over time. Average American household hot water costs $600 per year. System installed cost including professional installation, $1,500. Payback period, 2.5 years, years of remaining free operation after payback at 20-year system life, 17.5 years. Total savings over system lifespan, $10,500 minus the initial investment of $1,500 equals $9,000 in net savings. On a DIY installation at $400, total cost the net savings over 20 years exceed $11,000. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a fundamental change in your relationship with your energy bill. And every single one of those savings comes from a technology that has been proven, mass-produced, and available for purchase for decades. The most important thing to understand is this: the barrier to adopting this technology is not knowledge anymore. You now have the knowledge. The barrier is inertia, the assumption that if something this effective existed and was this affordable, someone would have told you about it by now. Someone would have recommended it. It would be standard. But that assumption only holds if the people with the platform to tell you have an incentive to tell you. Your gas company does not. Your electric utility does not. Your water heater manufacturer does not. The contractor who replaces your water heater every 10 years does not. The only person with an incentive to tell you is someone who is not selling you anything. So here it is. The system exists. It works. It has worked for 400 million households for 30 years. It costs $300, and after 18 months, you will never pay for hot water again. If this video showed you something real, hit the like button. It takes 1 second, and it is the only thing that helps this channel reach more people who need this information. Subscribe, because next week we are going back to the 1940s to uncover the food preservation system that saved families hundreds of dollars a year with zero equipment and zero cost. Leave a comment below. What is your monthly water heating bill right now? I read every single one. See you in the next one.